On presidential election day in Montenegro, this is Josh Friedman on a hill overlooking the Montenegrin capital of Podgorica. We will be getting to the election momentarily, but first we're going to set the scene a little bit by looking back 19 years. So right about 19 years ago, from this hilltop, you could see NATO bombs falling on Montenegrin territory as part of the NATO air campaign against Yugoslavia. There was bombing within Montenegro, and in fact there were, I believe, 8 deaths. There were casualties and some other issues that arose from that bombing, and of course there was quite a lot of resentment built up toward NATO. Yet fast forward 19 years and independent Montenegro is actually now a member of the NATO military alliance. And that is due in large part to the man who had already been in power for the better part of a decade, back when the war was taking place in 1999, yet today is running for the presidency. That man is Milo Djukanovic. He has been in power in Montenegro now for the better part of 3 decades, largely as prime minister. He's already served 6 terms as prime minister, and he has served 1 previous term as president. There have been a few breaks in between his various terms in office, yet for the most part, since 1991, Djukanovic has been in power, and arguably he's been in power the whole time because he's accused of calling the shots from behind the scenes, even when he's not formally the prime minister or the president, as has been the case for the past year and a half. So what has transpired over the past year and a half? Because that's been probably as exciting, if not more, than what was going on as the country transitioned from being a Yugoslav republic to being part of Yugoslavia as Yugoslavia was breaking up into being an independent country. Well, over that span, just to recap, Djukanovic was basically the guy. He's been in power all that time, and he himself has transitioned from being a very committed communist to an ally of the nationalist Serbian leader of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, and after that becoming an ardently pro-Western leader who has led Montenegro into NATO and is now trying to lead Montenegro into the European Union. Well, Montenegro is now a member of NATO, but over the past couple years, as that was unfolding, it didn't unfold so smoothly. So back in October 2016, there was a parliamentary election going on here in Montenegro, and Djukanovic was basically the incumbent. He was the incumbent prime minister, and he was leading his Democratic Party of Socialists into the election as the front runner, and it was in a sense presumed that he would continue on leading the country if they emerged victorious in the election, which they did. However, on election day, there was major controversy. So what transpired is very much unclear, but what the Montenegro state says happened was a coup attempt occurred in which Serbian nationalists attempted to take over, Serbian nationalists working with some Montenegros and allegedly organized by Russians, attempted to take over the Montenegrin parliament and government, assassinate Djukanovic, and stop Montenegro from joining NATO. Those are the allegations levied by the Montenegrin state, Montenegrin prosecutors, etc. And Montenegro is backed by its now Western allies in making those claims. There actually has been a trial, and the case is still ongoing. On the day of the election, there were 20 people arrested. They were mostly Serbian nationalists. I believe there were some Montenegrins included in that mix as well. And then fast forward to last fall, when this trial process began, there are, I believe, 14 people who were prosecuted and are being tried. 2 of them are Russians who are accused of organizing the coup attempt, and they're being tried in absentia. There has been a little more than what I would say is just circumstantial evidence that has surfaced in backing the state's claim. So the 2 Russians who are tried were apparently photographed in Belgrade meeting with an alleged co-conspirator who's now she's been turned a state's witness in the case, has been testifying against the other alleged co-conspirators. Nonetheless, though, there are many, many, many people who are very skeptical of the government's account of this coup attempt, and many people believe it's an outright fabrication. And many of those people live in Montenegro, and that's due in large part to Djukanovic's reputation and some past events, some of which included alleged election rigging. Djukanovic is quite a controversial figure. He's known internationally as being a bit of a strong man. He has some connections, possibly more than just some, to organized crime. He's been implicated in major cigarette smuggling operations, and there have been all kinds of organized, or rather maybe sketchy business transactions and deals and businesses that have been linked to him here in Montenegro. There was a privatization in which his family took ownership of a bank. That's one of many controversial things that have happened here over the past few decades while he's been in charge. So there are many people who are very skeptical of just about any major claim he puts forward, particularly if it relates to his or his party's election and an election day event. Now, shifting over to Moscow, Russia outright denies any involvement in the alleged coup attempt. However, at the same time, Moscow is or was very much an opponent of Montenegro joining NATO. Moscow spoke out repeatedly against Montenegro joining NATO, and in fact, right after the coup attempt, a prominent Russian official who's very involved in the Balkans came down to Belgrade, and he was meeting with Serbian leadership, and actually Serbian President Alexander Vučić made some statements about the whole case. So for now, I'm going to leave it at that. It's very unclear what all unfolded back in October of 2016 on election day, but what happened after that is a matter of just months later. Montenegro did formally join NATO, even though there are certainly many people here who are opposed to NATO membership, and there are many people here who, as is the case in Serbia, have very negative memories of the bombing that occurred here just about 2 decades ago. Well, nonetheless, Djukanovic is by all means the frontrunner and the favorite to win the presidential election, and possibly do that today. Today is the first round, so there are a whole bunch of competitors in the race. There is one competitor who has the backing of a variety of opposition parties, including pro-Russian opposition parties, but he's not really expected to be a very significant challenger to Djukanovic, and the only real question now, at least as far as today, is whether Djukanovic is going to claim more than 50% of the vote. If he does, then he will have won the presidency outright in today's election. If that's not the case, then it will go to a runoff, and in order for Djukanovic to reclaim the presidency, he would have to win in a runoff. Nonetheless, it's widely expected that Djukanovic will emerge victorious and will be the next Montenegrin president. It's anyone's guess how long he will stay in power in the country, either as a formal official head of state or prime minister. Now, actually, as president, he doesn't technically have as much power as the prime minister. The presidency here is more of a figurehead position, but I think it's pretty much understood that Djukanovic is calling the shots, and in fact, he selected the person who is now the prime minister, as Djukanovic was stepping down following that coup attempt and in the lead up to the formation of the current government here, and he selected the former secret police chief to be the now and current prime minister, which is another rather controversial move. So most people believe that Djukanovic is calling the shots in Montenegro, regardless of what office or lack thereof he is holding. Now, in the coming years, now that the NATO issue is resolved, or so it seems, the next big issue is Montenegro going to join the European Union? And by some indications, Montenegro might be the next country that joins the European Union. So the European Union is looking to the Western Balkans right now to find new members, and it has set a target date of 2025 for both Montenegro and Serbia to join the EU. And if you've been following along with my reporting on this current trip, you're well aware that there are certainly a variety of obstacles, but there's one very large obstacle, and Serbia joining the EU and doing it so soon, and that obstacle is Kosovo and what's going to happen with regard to recognition or normalization of relations between Belgrade and Pristina. So if you happen to think that it's going to take a while to get that resolved, then maybe it is Montenegro that will be the next member of the European Union. However, of course, the EU does have some standards with regard to rule of law and democracy, and it's debatable whether Montenegro can meet those standards over the next 7 years or so, or whether the West is just going to keep demonstrating its support for Djukanovic and the government here in Montenegro in exchange for stability in the country, in exchange for loyalty to the West. So those are some things to look out for in the coming years in Montenegro. This Djukanovic story just keeps playing out and playing out, so who knows, maybe he will be leading Montenegro into the European Union. We don't know for sure, but we'll be keeping an eye on the news here in the coming weeks, months, and years, like I said, in Serbia. As for now, I'm going to wait till the results are in to report back to you. I will probably be reporting them to you tomorrow, possibly sooner, and possibly in a different location. Who knows? We'll see. Montenegro is a beautiful country. I don't have that much time to spend here on this trip, but I would like to enjoy every second of it. So thank you very much for joining me on this election day report. For now, ciao from a lovely hill above Podgorica.